Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti. We're here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, as a disclaimer, this channel's for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions, and I'm not here to slander anyone. And probably won't even speculate too much in this one. So let's get started. Today, I want to have a discussion with you about some things, and let's see if they make sense. Or maybe they don't. I have to think that they will, though, because the more that we uncover about this case, the more it becomes harder and harder for people to stick their head in the sand about what's going on. And let's start back at the horrifying event, the atrocity. Don't drink up, it's too early. But when we look at the atrocity from a certain perspective, okay, how was this crime implemented? How was it done? What was the manner in which this crime was committed? This wasn't a typical unaliving. Okay, that nobody went in and strangled anybody. They didn't smother anybody. They didn't shoot anybody, right? This was a crime that was committed with a sharp-edged weapon or multiple sharp-edged weapons. These were unalivings that were committed with a blade inside of, according to law enforcement, inside of about 8 to 10 minutes. So we got to ask ourselves, first of all, who unalives multiple people with a sharp-edged weapon, period, regardless of how long it takes? I mean, that's not something that occurs every day, right? I mean, there has been many instances of those SKs, those SK crazies, and they do a lot of times unalive their victims with sharp-edged weapons. Now, I would be hard-pressed for you to tell me one instance, even one instance of a SK, right, a serial person that has unalived its victim with a sharp-edged weapon, and that was it. They just went and unalived them and took off. They're done, they run away. That doesn't happen with those types of individuals. All right, those types of individuals, when they unalive their victims with sharp-edged weapons, it's because of some kind of sick, typically sexual, deviant something going on there. You know, it's always something extremely terrible and weird and gross. That's what motivates those types of individuals. They don't just go and unalive somebody and then that was it. Oh, that's great, and I'm gone. That doesn't happen. And even if it did happen, it certainly doesn't happen on multiple victims. There is not one case that anybody can show me of a serial unaliver who unalived their victims with a sharp-edged weapon, or they went in, systematically unalived their victims in the quickest manner possible and then just left. That does not happen. Okay, that happens inside of 8 to 10 minutes, unaliving somebody with sharp-edged weapons. I mean, that is systematically unaliving people for the point of unaliving them because they're on a mission. Now, we've got to ask ourselves, once that's ascertained, who unalives people with sharp-edged weapons? Who is experienced? You can hear of many people being stabbed, cut, slashed, and they don't necessarily pass away, right? I mean, you can be stabbed many times and you'll typically still live unless a vital organ was cut. So we're talking about 4 individuals inside of, according to law enforcement, 8 to 10 minutes that were unalived with a blade. So, that's somebody that knows what they're doing. Who in the world knows what they're doing that well with a blade that could pull something like that off? I mean, can you think of any occupation? Even military. Military, they're trained with blades. They're trained with blades, though, when there's nothing else available to fight with. Once they're out of bullets, they have to pull out a blade. So the training that goes into, combat with a blade is totally different than unaliving. I mean, the only people I know of that would get extensive training unaliving somebody with a blade would be maybe a CIA assassin. Even they, I doubt, get a lot of training of unaliving people with a blade. So who in the world is experienced enough with a blade? And I'm talking about experienced enough. Who in the world has experience in unaliving people with blades? It's not a typical occupation, is it? Oh, now there is one group who are not only very experienced in it, but they're trained in it. They're trained in where to stick the blade. They're trained in what will unalive you with a blade. And then they have quite a bit of experience in actually using the blade to unalive people. And I think you know who I'm talking about. There's only one segment of the entire population that has experience with that. Or on a massive scale has experience with it. So that's what I want to discuss with you today, because once you start looking at this thing with your eyes open and you start to think about just the simplest details like who in the heck has experience unaliving people with blades, then the picture starts to come out of focus and you start to see the image. So what I want to do today is I want to go over a few things, and I'm going to enlighten you on a few things. And as I get into this, the first thing I want to talk about is that particular group, or the two particular groups that I have identified in this particular case. They're members of the Aryan family. And specifically, I'm referring to the Circle and the Knights. Now, the Knights are a well-known group in Idaho. They originated in Idaho. They are the Knights of Idaho. Now, the Circle is originally a group from Texas. But the Circle, they are kind of a unique group in themselves. And yes, they absolutely exist beyond the walls of Texas. They absolutely exist in the prisons in Washington and among many other state and federal prisons across the country. And they have particular skill sets that they employ, and they have a particular business model and strategy. So let's take a look at some information on them first of all, and then we're going to look at a similar group that operates in a similar fashion, just so that you can understand some of the nuances of these white supremacist prison gangs. Let's first look at the Aryan Circle. Okay, the Aryan Circle. Let's make this a little bigger. The Aryan Circle is a large, growing, and dangerous white supremacist prison gang based primarily in Texas, though it has a presence in a number of other states. It is active both in prisons and on the streets. It is an extreme and violent group with a long track record of unaliving, including the deaths of 2 police officers in Bastrop, Louisiana in 2007. Let's look at these key points here. The Aryan Circle combines extremism with organized crime. The Aryan Circle is an organized crime group. Its white supremacy often takes a back seat to traditional criminal motives. So the white supremacist part, that is a survival system that they have to adopt in prison. Because once you go to prison, apparently all the races separate in prison. And if you're not living with your own race, then there's rules in prison that will get you apparently get you messed up. So they have to adopt the white supremacy thing, but it's not their core function, right? It's not like they're a bunch of skinheads. But however, it uses white supremacy as a bond to cement the loyalty of individual members to the group, creating an extended Aryan crime family. All right, so you can see there, and the family is in quotations. And that's why when you hear terms like the Aryan family, you're associating one of the many different prison gangs with that. But it originated in the Texas prison system in the mid-1980s. For many years, it was a small group, but by 2009, it has become the second largest white supremacist gang in the Texas prison system. All right, so very big in Texas to start out. Now, you can see they're active in prisons, but also on the streets. The Aryan Circle has 4 distinct segments. Its Texas prison population, its federal prison population, its out-of-state prison population, and its street or free world population. The total number of Aryan Circle members is over 1,400, making it one of the largest white supremacist groups in the United States. Perhaps the most disturbing trend is the rapid growth in its free world membership, which has resulted in an epidemic of criminal activity across Texas and beyond. You can see the circle beyond Texas. By the late 1990s, the Aryan Circle developed significant presence in the free world across Texas and beyond. This has increased the group's criminal activity or criminal opportunities and their ability to recruit. The circle expects released prisoners to report to their free world district captain and continue their association with the group. So when we talk about these folks on the outside, they were once on the inside, and they have to adhere to the orders of the organization just like they were still inside. Because if they don't, not only can they be taken out outside, but you got to understand these folks will often end up back in prison at some point. So if they're not following the rules outside and they end up back in prison, they're as good as gone, and they know this. Now, criminal activities and violent crime. Organized violence is also a feature of the Aryan Circle activity. Behind prison walls, Aryan Circle members engage in violence against rival gangs, while inside and outside of prisons, the Circle has unalived or attempted to unalive a number of suspected informants or other people perceived to be weak links in order to protect the group. So it's in their bylaws. If somebody on the outside is interfering with business and they think they're an informant, because what does it say right here? It doesn't say they have unalived or attempted to unalive a number of informants. The key word right here is a number of suspected informants. When I say that the mothers and the stepmother in this case were informants, I truly believe they were. But it doesn't matter what I believe, or it doesn't matter what reality is. If they are a suspected informant, if they're believed to be the one that caused the action, it's as good as if they caused the action when it comes to these folks. And they will take action because it's in their bylaws. So that is the circle. Now, what I want to do is I watched a documentary recently on another white supremacist prison gang. It's another member of the Aryan Brotherhood, another sect called the Sons of the Aryan Culture. And while that's not the group that's involved in our crime, I think it will open your eyes a little bit to, number one, how the Aryan Circle is able to expand beyond the prison walls and expand to other states, but also how they operate and their modus operandi. I think it'll be eye-opening for you.
The federal prisoners when they got endorsed.
Building on SAC membership as they recruit inside that prison or get permission to recruit inside that prison under the Aryan Brotherhood.
Your up and coming Vikings, they have to ask permission, otherwise it's a kind of a disrespect.
It's not easy to go to a federal institution and get your gang recognized by AB. A lot of gangs have tried that and a lot of them have failed. Tin Man and Paz, they're not soft individuals. Like, they will stand on their business and they will handle it.
The endorsement from the Aryan Brotherhood, the largest white supremacist gang in America, means that SAC can flourish anywhere. And with members spread out across the country, it does.
So what started in a prison in the middle of nowhere of rural Utah is now exported and its brand popular throughout the federal prison system.
It's just a hamster wheel. You're just creating a new generation of crime. You can cut the head off the snake. You know, they're going to keep doing what they keep doing. That's it.
It's pervasive. It's everywhere. And like a cancer, once it spreads, it's really hard to then control it.
But other prison gangs don't know or respect the soldiers of Aryan culture yet. So the dispersed leaders are gonna have to prove themselves. First stop, Texas. Mark Snar. He's one of the recently convicted generals in SAC who gets shipped to the Beaumont facilities.
Mark Snar was one of the founding members here. He was housed with Tracy Sweeney here in Utah, and then
Okay, and the first thing we're going to look at is how do they recruit their members and how do they train them so that they do have those skills that we're alluding to in this video. And I was watching my guy A.R. Hayes in a video he did the other day. Excellent content as always, A.R. You're the man. Watch his channel. He's got great stuff. But in that video, he was talking about putting in work and what that meant. So let's hear how the Sons of Aryan Culture explain it.
Dirty work, take out this brother, get us drugs, get us contraband, carry these weapons around for us. So it definitely protects the older members or the established members from catching further charges or discipline within inside the prison.
Not only do you have to pick a side, but you got to build a name for yourself. And you can't build a name for yourself without violence. Once you're part of an organization, if you jump, everybody has to jump with you.
A lot of those groups like SAC refer to going to prison as getting your degree, right? Going to college.
You have to do work. And when I'm talking about work is whatever they want you to do. The problem with that is once you become a line, it's blood in and blood out.
Now, obviously, all of the things that they do while they're in prison is part of a system to keep the revenue flowing and to intimidate and protect themselves. But what we're seeing up in Washington and Idaho is expansion in business beyond the prison walls. And that's happening all across right now. And this is going to explain it much better than I can.
Outside prison. Certainly we've seen the shift in emphasis more towards the streets over the last few decades as prison gangs have become more outward looking and less insular. Despite pretty substantial efforts to curtail this, we continue to see individuals exert substantial influence from their cells.
Typically, soldiers on the outside generate profits that make their way to leadership on the inside, and order is maintained through intimidation.
When they're released, that particular individual out of prison and paroled, they are expected to maintain their status and membership.
Once you're on the outside, you're expected to support those on the inside. You're expected to help the families of those that are on the inside. You're expected to help them get narcotics on the inside, to help them get the contraband that they're looking for.
SAC leadership often...
Now, when we talk about the atrocity itself, and I put together a very detailed scenario in which I believe this thing may have happened. And I didn't do it out of a whim and just thinking through things. I did it based on the research that I've done. So when I talk about how I believe that the getaway vehicle was planted in advance, that The weapons were planted in advance, that the whole thing was planned out very thoroughly with the patsy to take the fall, even down to removing their clothes and somebody taking off with their clothes and the murder weapon or the unaliving weapons. Those are things that are done by this group. And this is going to give you an example of that. And as you watch this, does it not remind you of something?
He's had no idea. They were initially speaking as if it was a normal meeting.
But it isn't any normal meeting. It's Leo John's last moments alive before he's murdered in a carefully executed plot that's taken months to plan.
They arranged for another gang member to serve as a lookout. They had 2 shanks placed in the cell, as well as clean prison clothing. And so they lured him to the cell and attacked him without any warning and viciously stabbed him repeatedly. Both lungs were pierced in the attack. There was blood everywhere, and he died, of course, in the cell. They changed their clothes, walked out, just went about their business work. They were bragging about it later, joking about just gruesome details. Like Factful mentioned that he stabbed Johns in the eye during the attack. CCTV showed that the 2 of them, the murderers, shaking hands after the deed.
Okay, and the final piece to this is I've got just one more short clip I want you to watch, but I think the end of it's very telling in a lot of ways. When you hear like drip drop, he brings up the Odinism angle a whole lot, right? And then you've got that Delphi case, which I know nothing about. I'm trying not even to look at it because I don't like cases like that. That involves young children. I just can't do it. But you hear about the Odinist angle often. Well, the Odinist part of this is the part that doesn't make sense to many, many people, because they think of Odinism as some type of cult that does weird sacrifices to the Norse gods. And folks, when it comes to the Aryan Brotherhood or other sects of the Aryan family, and Odinism is almost always associated with them, but people just don't understand what it really is about. And what the Odinist angle is truly about, like you'll see the jewelry that people wear that represents, the imagery of Odinism, the tattoos, the runes. Folks, the Odinism angle of this is real simple. It is a communication system that you have to be able to decode to understand what the communications are actually saying. They communicate with ancient Odinistic runes. It's a language that only they understand. And I've been trying hard to break that code, and it's a code that I can't break, and unless somebody can really research it out, I guess, with a true member that is familiar with deciphering that code, then I'm just going to have to leave that at that. That's why I was wanting to leave the Odinism angle up to drip drop, because it is a very complicated angle. But it has nothing to do with spirituality. They may put that out as a front, but it is a communication system.
The outside as well, passing letters through the wives and girlfriends who visit.
A kite is like a note that is written.
That can be passed along from inmate to inmate, a very primitive way of communicating.
It's usually in code, like Sack uses runes. Runes are like an ancient Viking language.
Pen and paper.
So, with all that being said, what we're dealing with here in this case is quite large. It's quite large, because not only did this take place for the reasons that we've been over and over, But I'm starting to see the differences now as I dive into more details in this of why they say that the FBI and the local Moscow police department were conducting two separate investigations, and the FBI wasn't sharing much with the Moscow police department, because the FBI is obviously the investigative branch of the federal government. See, it's different than the DEA. The DEA is an operation branch. ATF's an operation branch. The FBI are investigators. And they were investigating this thing on a whole nother level than the little Moscow PD. So they were probably giving them a little bit of information here and there just so that they'd have nuggets to be able to do whatever it is they wanted to do. But the FBI held everything else close to the vest. So I do believe that they were on to this thing quite a bit sooner than the Moscow PD. Now again, I firmly believe that Mr. Kohberger and his cohort were the patsies being set up. I don't even think Kohberger was an intentional patsy. I think it just worked out that way due to his DNA being on that knife sheath that nobody in the world would have expected to be there. But we're going to continue to pick fly shit out of black pepper and dig this thing, dig it up, pull it apart, break it down until we figure out every aspect of this thing. But please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your thoughts, post your criticisms, post your comments. I want to hear what you have to say. I've got another video I'm going to do here shortly that is it's a tough one for me to do because it's hard to find answers on that subject. But I'm gonna put together. I've already put together the facts and the circumstances that is known, and we're going to apply what we've learned now in this theory, and we're going to apply it to that situation and vet it and see how it makes sense. And I definitely want to get y'all's thoughts on that. So, but anyways, until that video comes out, Pavarotti is out.